So it's a special session tonight that we have. We usually have the journey of the soul that happens Thursday nights. And that is when we learn all about the beginning of the soul and it coming down and then being in the body and synchronizing with the body, which we learn from the book of Tanya. And by the way, to that end, next week, in addition to Thursday night, we're going to be starting seminars on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m., which is going to be also about the journey of the soul, but it's going to be afterlife. What happens when the soul leaves the body? So that's going to be an exciting series as well, starting next Wednesday evening, and it's all going to be online. So join us with the same link, 7 p.m. But tonight, being that we are in the Hebrew month of Shvat, and soon this Shabbat will be the 10th day of Shvat, I wanted to share with you more about the significance of this day on the Jewish calendar. We may have spoken about it in some previous lessons about the day of the 10th of Shvat, which is the day that two things happen. One, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, which was the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, passed away on the 10th of Shvat, and that happened 71 years ago. And then a year later, on the very same day, the seventh Lubavitcher Rebbe, who's the one that we know as the Lubavitcher Rebbe these days, is the one that took on the mantle of leadership. And I know we have shared many insights, many stories about what a Rebbe is and the leadership of each one of the Rebbes. However, when it comes to any special occasion on the Jewish calendar, just like if we were to be approaching very soon the holiday of Purim, or soon it's going to be Passover, we nonetheless review and try to learn some deeper meaning into each one of the holidays. So too, given that the position and the responsibility of a Rebbe is enormous, the leadership is something that the Jewish people need and the generation needs. And sometimes, people don't understand or realize that a Rebbe is different than a rabbi. It's not just a matter of pronunciation and perhaps a different accent that it sounds like a Rebbe, but Rebbe is usually a title that is held specifically for those that not only have the scholarship of knowing the Torah, the written Torah, as we know, the 5 books of Moses and the books of prophets and the Mishnah and the Talmud and the Code of Jewish Law. And beyond that, someone who knows Kabbalah and mysticism and is well-versed in all of those teachings, but that a Rebbe is someone that has a unique soul, which gives him the capability to be able to tap into all the other souls in every generation, to know what's going on with them, and to be able to precisely guide them and give them the energy that they need, the guidance that they need at the right time, at the right moment, to lift them up so that not only they individually go further in life, but then collectively that the Jewish people should be able to achieve the goal that was set out for them to be. So tonight, the program that we have prepared is a collection of some of the teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and some glimpse into his leadership, so that we can have a deeper appreciation for exactly that, a leader within the Jewish people. And the host for tonight, the one that is going to be introducing each section of tonight's program is one of my old friends. We were actually in yeshiva together, Rabbi Shochat. He's originally from Canada. And he eventually, after finishing the years of yeshiva together, whereas I took my journey to take my position, he took a position in England as a rabbi. He's actually on the short list of rabbis that were nominated to be the chief rabbi of England. So he's going to be taking us through some lessons and journey into what the Rebbe is all about. I can't actually say all about because I think we're still touching the tip of an iceberg of the uniqueness of the Rebbe. And hopefully after tonight's class, we will not only have more of an appreciation for the Rebbe, but we will have more of an inspiration as we go forward in life. So I'm going to jump right into it and have tonight's program start. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to type it in the chat section. And hopefully, depending on what time we finish, I may be able to address some of those questions either at the end of tonight's program or perhaps at a later time. So we are ready to start.
L'chaim. Welcome to the Farbrengen. How wonderful to be together. What a blessing that despite the separation brought on by the pandemic, we can still be together in heart and mind and even see and hear one another. May God help that the pandemic comes to a speedy conclusion, allowing us to come together as before. And with Mashiach's imminent arrival, disease of every kind will be cured and we will never be separated again. For 80 years, God observed Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. For 80 years, the Almighty watched and waited until that fateful day. Moshe was now a shepherd caring for hundreds of sheep. One day, a little lamb fled the flock, running off into the wilderness. Moshe pursued it and with gentle compassion lifted it up on his shoulder and brought it back to the flock. And in that moment, when Moshe was proven to care not only for the grand flock, but for the shy individual, God had found the leader he was seeking for his children. As we mark 70 years of the Rebbe's leadership, this anecdote is fondly recalled. For like the first Moshe, the Rebbe, our Moshe, was just as gifted a leader. He educated us with his original Torah insights. He nurtured us with his love and incredible empathy. He united us into a mighty army by treating us as a flock, and he empowered us as individuals by seeing each of us with our own merits. So tonight we will experience every one of those leadership qualities. We will watch the Rebbe expound original Torah thoughts, conduct mass public gatherings, meet individuals face to face, and we'll hear from those whose lives were completely transformed by the Rebbe. The videos will focus on some of the great principles that guided the Rebbe and continue to be the guiding principles of Chabad as we enter the third decade of the 21st century. The success of a Jewish leader can only be measured by how many leaders are created by his or her leadership. As we explore the life and teachings of a true shepherd of Israel, may we open our hearts and minds to be inspired to the realization that we are meant to be shepherds too, each of us in our own right, in our own individual lives. My friends, this event is a Farbrengen. Let's talk about that. Farbrengen. For those who have tasted it, The word itself is therapeutic. It's often translated as a Hasidic gathering, but the word actually means simply people sitting together. Farbrengen means, first and foremost, you are not alone. We are in this together, this thing called life. With a steady diet of Farbrengen, a person never feels like they're struggling on their own. The steady pulse of Hasidic joy that permeates Chabad and any Hasidic community worthy of the name is a direct result of the regularly held Farbrengens. The Farbrengens draws in tired, worn-out souls and puts out invigorated, energetic Hasidim. Now, a Farbrengen with the Rebbe was all that and then so much more. The Rebbe never failed to remind the assembled that aside from anything that would be discussed at the Farbrengen, the very act of getting together is priceless. The fact that we are sitting all together is already a source of blessing and inspiration. And that is as true about tonight's gathering as any Farbrengen. At the Rebbe's Farbrengen, the words all together meant much more. There were men, women, boys, and girls. Men on the floor, women and girls in the balconies. Little boys huddling under the Rebbe's table, literally sitting at his feet. Elderly people fighting off sleep were determined to be at the Farbrengens. The Rebbe's own mother sat at so many of his Farbrengens. Great rabbis, leaders of thousands in their own right, made their way to these Farbrengens. The rich and the poor sat shoulder to shoulder, the scholar and the novice. Grandparents and grandchildren enjoyed the Farbrengen together. The Rebbe was the Farbrengen conductor. He led the audience down deep philosophical passages, challenging convention and unveiling new and fresh perspectives on everything from Talmudic intrigue to Kabbalistic mysteries, to halachic conundrums, to parenting techniques, to the American public school system, to foreign affairs, to local neighborhood concerns. And then there were the breaks. Between talks, the audience was given a chance to internalize the Rebbe's messages. There were toasts of l'chaim, opportunities for the Rebbe to make eye contact with as many of the assembled as possible, marvelously transforming his public address into essentially hundreds of intimate personal connections. A nod, a l'chaim, a hint of a smile, a brief but timeless bond. And of course, there were the songs. The songs varied, reflective, meditative ballads, and breathless, exhilarating outbursts of joy. The songs were the treatment that made feelings out of thoughts, converting the Rebbe's ideas into deeply felt emotions. All in all, the Farbrengens were greatly enjoyable and often transformative experiences. They elevated the mind, they warmed the heart, they brought people together, and perhaps more than anything else, the Farbrengens left people feeling empowered. Often a jaded individual may have walked into the Farbrengen, but an excited, animated, jolly individual danced out, optimistic about the future, eager to face tomorrow, overflowing with a noble ambition to do something good. This was the power of a Farbrengen with the Rebbe. And in some measure, this is the power of every Farbrengen, including, and especially, this one here tonight. So without further ado, let's wish each other a hearty l'chaim. Please fill a glass with a kosher drink, and let's toast our good fortune to be together and the bright future that awaits us. L'chaim.
Chaim.
In the course of his years of leadership, the Rebbe held more than 1,000 Farbrengens. None were more memorable than the first one on Wednesday, 10th of Shvat, January 17th, 1951. Witnesses described the electricity in the room that night. It was the previous Rebbe's first yahrzeit, and the air was thick with anticipation that the Rebbe would finally accept the role of Rebbe after a year of resisting. And the Rebbe did not disappoint. He delivered his first official mimer, that is Hasidic discourse, explaining some of the most elusive points of Kabbalah and Hasidus, weeping his way through much of it. He spoke with unrestrained emotion about his predecessor and father-in-law and the urgency of carrying on his vision and directives. It was a powerful and historic night. But there was one moment that night that was both humorous and poignant, which captured the imagination of the crowd. With a smile, the Rebbe announced that in America, every promotion demands a statement, preferably one with shock value. And so in keeping with local custom, he would make an official statement. And that statement, framed in that Farbrengen, utterly changed the Jewish world. I won't just yet disclose what that statement was. In a minute, a video will play where you'll hear the Rebbe tell you himself. But suffice it to say that the Rebbe's statement revolutionized, yes, revolutionized, there is no other way to put it, the idea of Ahavat Yisrael, the expected mutual love between all Jewish people. Torah commands Jewish people to have special love for their fellow Jew, but what does that really mean? What is this love? How important is it to feel it? And what role does it play in Jewish religious life? In the following video, we'll hear a variety of people talk about what love for fellow Jews means to them and about who inspired them to warm to that idea. And then we'll join the Rebbe at that historic 1951 Farbrengen and hear this statement that indeed changed forever the way Jewish people feel about each other. Please listen with your neshama.
Ahavat Yisrael means to me just believing in the unique potential in every individual, and specifically the divine potential in each and every Jew.
Ahavat Yisrael is the love and acceptance of every Jewish soul, regardless of their background, religious observance, level of education.
Every Jewish neshama is precious. We all have a piece of God inside of us, so we never give up on Jewish people. We're all part of a big family. I once heard a story, someone asking the Rebbe if he ever gets tired of just handing out bills to thousands of Jews every single day. And his answer was, how can I get tired just looking at diamonds?
The Rebbe inspired a generation of Jews to see the greatness in every Jew. His literal translation of the concept of loving one's fellow Jew was his very life. In fact, the Rebbe made Ahavat Yisrael the bedrock of his leadership.
The Rebbe, for me, has actively proven that there are people willing to share love in order to grow an infinite boundary of unity or solidarity. And the way that you create the infinite boundary is by not judging everybody else.
Throughout his leadership, the Rebbe modeled love of a fellow Jew, and it was infectious. The Rebbe focused on it during his inauguration. In fact, it was his very mission statement.
Is dort demol der Wort, wo der Rebbe hat übergesagt in dem Namen von dem alten Rebben, als wahrhafte Lereyacho Komecho is a Kehle, als wahrhafte es Hawaii Lekecho, I bemele is bazei derselber Seder. A beschas me legt dem Dogisch auf wahrhafte Lereyacho Komecho, I das bazei nicht kinstiri so wahrhafte es Hawaii Lekecho, nur verkehrt, dass noch a Kehle durch den Ruf hat man a tieferen Verbund mit wahrhafte es Hawaii Lekecho. I da in Amerika is a allemal a Seder, a deste Sache will hören a Statement. Und das Statement, da darf sein etwas mit a Chidush dover, mit a Inge, was im Mavel es erreihen. I bemele das, ich weiß nicht, das darf Mavel sein es erreihen, aber immer will hören a Statement, hat der Rebbe gesagt, dass da drei Sachen. Als da Avas is Hashem, und so da Avas Ater, und so da Avas Yisrael. Und hat die alle drei Sachen sein in Kule Chad. Das ist, man kann nicht voneinander teilen. Zwischen einer haben wir der Zweite. Und man handelt, wie bald das ist Kule Chad, und das ist auch Kule Chad, wie ein Netz im Seins. Das ist, aber ist dämmelt, ist dort der Klall, als ein Ingen Atzmi. Wenn man halt so kann und ein Teil davon ist, hat dämmelt, hat der Tefis Kule, als bringt auf Chassidus B'Shem Baal Shem Tov bringt es auf B'Shem Rishonim. Also etzem kishat Tefis b'Miktsose hat Tefis b'Kule. Und wie bald als hat die alle drei Sachen seinen Kule Chad, ist in was für Achilek mit Niton Chappen, darf man wissen sein, am Chapton alle drei Sachen. Bemele dürfen alle wissen, aber schaß man habt sich on Onavas Hashem, ist das nicht eine Sache, was man kann damit jetzt sein, und man kann sich damit halten, eben mit Hoben Avas Atere und eben mit Hoben Avas Yisroel.
If you're going to unlock your potential and be your very best, you're going to have somebody see you like that and inspire you and encourage you to do that. The Rebbe to me is like the ultimate coach. It's the closest thing we have in this life for having somebody seeing you from God's perspective.
From that small room in Brooklyn, the Rebbe's vision was manifest over the years that followed, in the millions of people that he taught and touched. It is, perhaps, the greatest mark he left on each and every one of us.
The Rebbe said that his statement might be surprising. Here's a question for you. Were you surprised by what the Rebbe said? What do you consider to be so shocking about what the Rebbe said? Here's the point. To be a full Jew and to have a full relationship with Hashem and His Torah, one needs to have Ahavas Yisrael. The point is that if we are to experience an emotional closeness to God and a real appreciation for Judaism, it will only happen when we genuinely love one another. We cannot simply bury our heads in the Talmud or immerse ourselves in religious life, or maybe choose to advocate for Israel, whilst all the while distancing ourselves from our fellow Jews and somehow still imagine that we are part of the way there. Ahavat Yisrael, love for a fellow Jew, must always be the starting point. It is the fundamental foundation of any Jewish home. You see, our love and our respect for God and His Torah should therefore compel us to embrace our fellow Jew, even if only as a means of growing closer to God and gaining a better understanding of His Torah. If the first video spoke about the Rebbe's vision of what to do, that is, prioritize Ahavat Yisrael, this segment will speak to how to do it. To love every Jew is a lovely sentiment, but is it really doable? It seems a bit fantastic, perhaps, and yet somehow the Rebbe didn't suggest it was a good idea. He made it happen. What's the secret? The secret lies in the way the Rebbe looked at his fellow Jews and the way the Rebbe taught others to do the same. The Rebbe taught again and again that vision is subjective, that you see what you want to see. Critical eyes will see opportunities for criticism. Kindly eyes will always see beauty. Kindly and wise eyes will see even hidden beauty. So choose your eyes carefully. Decide what you're looking for, and with enough effort, you'll always find it. Building on the wisdom of generations of Hasidic teachings, the Rebbe taught us about each other. He spoke about the gems of humanity that lays buried in every heart and the sparks of godliness that lays buried in every soul. And while he intrigued us with this talk of the preciousness of every individual, it was the way that the Rebbe lived every word he spoke that captured our hearts. The only thing more amazing than the way that the Rebbe preached unconditional love and respect was the way that the Rebbe practiced unconditional love and respect. The Rebbe didn't only remind us to open our eyes to each other, he helped us develop the kind of eyes that saw and always perceived the good in others. By changing what your eyes see when they see a Jew, you can begin to see the truth of God and Torah simply by looking at the person next to you. With a slight adjustment provided by a Farbrengen with the Rebbe, a whole new person appears in front of us. A whole new picture comes into focus, and a whole new world of goodness and beauty unfolds in front of our eyes. So when we play the next video, see if you can identify the Rebbe's unique take on people, both from hearing testimony from people that the Rebbe trained, as well as hearing the Rebbe speak about it directly. See if you cannot pick up on the nuanced way in which the Rebbe beheld his fellow Jews, and decide if you would enjoy being seen in this light. And then decide if you could see yourself looking at other people in this same way.
Every Jew has a soul that is precious. The Rebbe did not preach blind love. His eyes were open to see the beauty in every Jew, and helped so many others to see just how precious each one is and how powerful. In public talks, personal encounters, and in his conduct, the Rebbe emphasized this reality. Mr. Louis Goldstein is a businessman from Sydney, Australia. In 1989, along with his wife and son, he had an audience with the Rebbe.
I had never seen Yechidus before, so the whole thing was quite fascinating. And there were about 200 people there the first time we went. And the Rebbe spoke to us first, he gave a sikha, and after that, then it started, you went one by one. There was no order, you could go at any time, line up and just wait your turn and speak to the Rebbe. But we were quite fascinated by the whole thing, so we watched everyone else's Yechidus, and the Australians went last. And I was actually standing in front of the Rebbe, maybe 10 meters away, and just couldn't hear a word, but I was watching the whole thing, and it was just the most amazing thing just to watch Yechidus, to watch the Rebbe in action. And my wife and I were holding our son Zalman, and he was, I think, maybe a year old. So we had Yechidus with the Rebbe. So I asked the Rebbe for a bracha for my brother.
I'd like to ask just one bracha for my brother, who has absolutely no shaykhs to Yiddishkeit at all. His name is Meir ben Etta. Absolutely no shaykhs at all to Yiddishkeit.
He was born a Jew. That means he's not only shaykhs to Yiddishkeit. He is a Jew, yeah. And that is his essence. You must only reveal it by removing the dirt or the shame that is covering it up. And that depends on his relatives, and especially brother or sister-in-law. That means you.
So I got a lesson in Chabad Hasidus 101 from the Rebbe. 101, one-on-one, from the Rebbe directly. So, and that, I realized that encapsulated the entire philosophy of Chabad in a nutshell, in one sentence, where when you look at another Yid, the fact that they're born Jewish, that's all that counts. And some people need polishing, some people don't. We all probably need a bit of polishing, and that's what the Rebbe was telling me. And it was a very powerful point.
Verjeden sich jedu, wo der Baal wurde gesagt, dem Wort von dem Baal Shem Tov. Ki siya atem eretz chefetz, a Jiden und jeder Ried befragt, wird geglichen zu eretz chefetz zu Ort. Was eretz wird angerufen eretz chefetz. Was wird angerufen eretz chefetz? Der Fall, was inne wenig kliegen, a won im Tevis und Margolies, sie liegt ab Mai im Chai. Sie liegen kamo Eitzes, was seine Gonus bemavi ho Adomo. Der Unterschied nur, sie da bei ihnen, was gefinden sich Korev, zu dem Eberflach, bemele darf ein bisschen agrobton. Gefind mir gleich dem Even Tevo, gefind gleich dem Mayim Chaim. Sie da sehne, was mir darf groben tiefer und noch tiefer, kdei arobzunehmen mit alle Inyonim, hamalimim und mastirim.
Mr. George Rohr is a businessman and philanthropist based in New York City. In 1991, he helped found a beginner's prayer service for the high holidays at his synagogue, KAJ, in Manhattan.
When I moved to New York and got married, I started a beginner's minyan at our shul here in Manhattan. It was basically an introductory service for Jewish adults that may or may not have had the benefit of a Jewish education. And I was leading it with not a great deal of preparation, but nevertheless I did my best to lead it. And it turned out to have been a success. I remember, as I always did every year, going to visit the Rebbe for Lekach between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I thought to myself, this year I'm going to be different. I'm going to give the Rebbe some nachas. I'm going to give him some good news and make him happy and proud and smile and especially make him proud of me.
I'd like to let the Rebbe know, I hope he has some nachas from the following. This Rosh Hashanah, in our shul, I started a minyan for beginners who don't know anything. We had 200 people. 200. On Rosh Hashanah, and Yetz Hashem for Yom Kippur we'll have also. And the Shabbos, we started the first regular Shabbos, we had about 50 people.
Last Shabbos.
Past Shabbos. People without any background to start learning a little bit about Yiddishkeit. And I'd like the Rebbe's bracha that we should continue.
And I expected a big yasher koach from the Rebbe. I expected the Rebbe to give me a high five and to congratulate me and so forth. When I said the words, Jews without any Jewish background, the Rebbe's smile disappeared. And he looked at me with his piercing blue eyes, and I knew that I had said something very, very wrong. And I didn't know what.
He'll explain to all these people that they have a real background of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yankee. And so the Rivke Lochel. That's for you, and that's for the people who have no background.
The Rebbe was saying, this is royalty you're talking about. These aren't Jews without any background. This is royalty. And that was the Rebbe. For every Jew, for the Rebbe was royalty.
Dem Mieden, was ruft sich an der Weile, Beshem Ache, is a sichere Sache, a sechet von Eretz Chefetz, a sichere Sache, a Baljidach mimenu niedach, a sichere Sache, a verbunden mit Mekel, Mayim Chaim, Avaya Lekim, Chaim, mit darf sich mehr nicht haben Geduld und nicht jallen in Tirche wie Gie, bis zum Messias Nefesh, Kipschuto auf der Grobensach und aufgraben dem Bejer, bis waren es im Stürmen, dem Mayim Chaim Shebetecha, aber das gewähnt der Wede von dem Baal HaYilul.
The Nigun, Hasidic melody, plays a central role in Jewish life. It is the soundtrack of the Hasidic experience. A Farbrengen is interspersed with Nigunim, some reaching deep inside, stirring the strings of the soul. Others soaring high, uplifting and energizing. A Farbrengen was and is today a time for meditation and reflection. The first of 13 Nigunim taught by the Rebbe, set to the words of King David, speaks of the soul's intrinsic thirst for connection with God, no matter its present state.
Tomalecho nafshi, komalecho besori, be'eretz Zion ve'yoye beli moyi. Came back kodesh chazi sichali lois uschoch voidecho. Came back kodesh chazi sichali lois uschoch voidecho. Came back kodesh chazi sichali Lilo Isus Choch Voidecho.
Desirable. You may also use the word loved, wanted, special, unique, exceptional, preferred, extraordinary. It doesn't matter what your choice of word might be. What matters, indeed, is what you see. Do you see the unlearned Jew as someone less than desirable because of their lack of knowledge or religious experience? Do you see them as having no connection to Judaism because of their lack of involvement? Or someone who just lacks education and a welcome embrace? You might even see them as a prince or princess because they are a child of God. Time and again, the Rebbe trains us to see the essence, the truth. You see, it's easy to put on rose-colored glasses and see everything in an unrealistic, hopeful, naive picture. It may not be accurate and genuine, but it looks good. So the Rebbe gives us a metaphor, and oh, so apropos. Dig, uncover, the metaphor tells us, with patience and perseverance, and you will be amazed at what you find. Where you might see a pile of dirt, the Rebbe's perspective sees fresh spring water waiting to burst forth. Where you might see a dirty clump of earth, the Rebbe teaches you to see the diamond. And this brings me to the next point. Let's dig a little. We can look deeper at ourselves or indeed at a fellow Jew. Ask yourself, what am I capable of? What is my potential? Once you've adjusted your perspective, you will discover that the reason the Rebbe trains you to see diamonds and gems is because they are actually there. Your true value far surpasses your own imagination and the same thing of the Yiddilah sitting next to you. When looking at the surface of the individual, the exterior, you may see one thing, but beneath that surface belies a potential, a talent, an ability that they may be unaware of, because no one has ever seen that with the Rebbe's eyes. No one has ever dug beneath the surface. No one had believed in them sufficiently, and thus no one empowered them appropriately. In the next video, we bring you a few individuals' encounters with the Rebbe where they are shocked to discover their own hidden value, their own real potential. They have a value that they weren't even aware of. Can you look at others or at yourself and see what cannot initially be seen?
By seeing the essence of the Jewish soul, the Rebbe showed what we are capable of. He encouraged people to see themselves and others from God's perspective, how even the most minute action is significant and impactful. Rabbi Fishel Jacobs is a rabbi, author, and expert on the laws of family purity. After a successful career in professional karate, he reconnected to his Jewish roots and had an audience with the Rebbe in 1981.
As I walked in, I didn't think, I did it out of naivety. I took a tape recorder and I put it in my mother's pocketbook. I didn't ask, I just assumed it was okay because I knew it was an important thing. So I actually tape recorded the entire thing.
God Almighty bless every one of you and all the members of the family, and all things necessary, spiritually and materially, and especially to have much nachas, much pleasure from every one of the children in all aspects.
At this point, the Rebbe introduced another subject which I really had no idea that was going to come up and was out of the blue.
We have received smicha. We have studied for smicha, not ready to study for smicha.
That was extremely difficult because my academic side hadn't expanded very much. I'm in Shir Aleph, which means I'm still in the first class. He said, I'd like to give you, it's a custom amongst Jews to give money for charity. Before, on your way back, you give this in Eretz Yisrael to charity, your parents give this and this dollar. And then he sent, that was the end of the Yichus. We got up and that was the end of it. This is where the hard part comes in. The smicha was really difficult. It was really a nightmare. That took about 2 years. At that point, my confidence had gotten up a little bit, and I said, well, wait a minute, it's possible. You can do it. I wrote into the Rebbe, and by now I'm 27 years old. And I said to the Rebbe, well, the Rebbe told me to do smicha. Would the Rebbe give me his blessings to do the head smicha of the head rabbinate of Israel? And the Rebbe wrote back that same day. I got an answer from Rebbe Grant. The Rebbe says, yes, do that. And from that smicha, thank God, I was able to publish. My first book was Chachmat Tahara, while I was in Kollel. It's a commentary on Shulchan Aruch. I published my most famous book, which is Family Purity. I had 7 printings of that book till now. We had a Chabad house at Tel Aviv University. And I was a rabbi in the Israeli prison service. I wrote a book about that. But who thought? People were dismissing me as an ex-athlete. No one saw that in me. No one saw that I could learn smicha. But he gave me that belief, and he gave me that power.
Besorgt wir loschen a Gemorre, als ein Mensch kann aufton in der ganzen Welt, Chayiv Odom Leimer Bishvili Nivre Hoilom, bis wannet, wie die Gemorre sagt in Sanhedrin, wie der Monsche mehrere Mol, Aloma Nivre Hoilom Yechidi, aber der Mensch hat beschaffen, der Rebischter hat beschaffen die Menschen, hat ihn beschaffen, nicht wie andere Minen. Als sie gewähren ein paar oder mehrere Suges, der Mensch ist beschaffen geworden, ein Yechidi, ein 99er oder Marische. Und wir verantworten das, hat der Rebischter hat dämmelt, gleich in dem Onibs von Baschav gemacht, einen Unterschied. Dem soll wissen sein, jeder Mensch bechol Mokim und bechol Zman, a jeder Mensch ist ein Eila Mole. Punkt, als wie in jene beschade Mächten Reger von beschaffenden Menschen. Sie werden 91er Mensch und hat in sich Kehlel gewähnt. Alle Deres, ad Seif Kol Haderes, als darf sich betrachten, jeder Mensch, Seif Kol Haderes, in Zman HaGolus, wo soll sich nicht gefühlen, als ist ein Eila Mole, wo das ist ein Ausdruck von Teras Emes, Bediuk, an nichts nur Stamm, ist eine Welt, nur ist ein Eila Mole, eine Welt, was ist ungefüllt, mit allen Sachen, was sie darf sein in der Welt, als sie fällt dort gar nicht Chose. Es werden nicht mit dem gegeben, die Pchiro, soll das herausbringen, Mina Keach, und Mina Helen, El HaPeil, Vel HaGilui.
In the early 1970s, Diane Abrams practiced law in New York and taught the nation's first Women and the Law course at NYU. Her husband, Robert Abrams, served as New York State Attorney General.
I wrote a memoir of my grandmother. I think it was published in the early 70s. The reason I came to write this article about her was because I became involved in the early days of the women's movement, the feminist movement before, and I taught the first Women in the Law course in 1969 at NYU Law School. At the time, there seemed to be a criticism of certain aspects of the Jewish religion in terms of its approach to women. And I remembered my grandmother very clearly, we're very close, as very traditional Jewish woman in terms of her religious observance, but yet she was so highly respected, and she had such a respected place in the family and the community. So I didn't feel that it was a conflict for women to take their particular mitzvot seriously and have their particular role within Judaism and yet have an equal role in the society. So I was trying to explain what some saw as a contradiction. You know, in our meetings, the Rebbe, I see would sometimes call, he'd say, well, how is your writing coming along? You're writing more, because he loved the article. He said, this has to be a book. And that day, that was actually a few days after the Crown Heights riots, and my husband and I came to meet with some of the leaders of the community to see what could be done. And I thought I was just going along for him to talk to my husband. And I was very shocked when he said to me, how is that book? How is the writing? How is it coming along?
A double portion of benediction.
Thank you. Thank you.
A double portion for you also.
We met.
Promised me any time they got to write a book of memoirs about you, the gun.
Yes.
What happened to the book?
Well, I'm doing some things in that direction, which I'll inform you as it goes along.
It takes you too long here.
You're right.
You have much more other things to do after you finish that.
Okay.
May God Almighty bless you and good news.
You know, I think I must have turned beet red. I don't know if that showed up. It probably didn't show up in the video, but how I felt. So actually, from that day forward, I mean, the man had a very strong influence on people. I sat down for the next year. I did nothing but, try and write about my grandmother. I did a lot of research, and it did lead me into many other fascinating, productive avenues.
Die Licht von Kirchovim, von Stern, was Israel sich nimmt schon bei den Kirchovim. Und was die Kirchovim gefunden sich, in der Merchag Otzu, in einer gar weite Strecke von dem Ort, wo sie gefunden sich der Mensch, was die Sterne. Von deswegen sieht die Lichtigkeit von den Sternen, bis auf sehr viel, als kann nicht bemerken, a Schinui, a Änderung, zieht das a Stern, was finkelt und leicht wird lichtiger oder weniger, und andere Änderungen, oder sehr sicher, bei jeder Menschen in seiner Arbeit, wenn tut in dem, mit seinem, wie ein Mensch darf tun, ist nutzen die Kabdruf der Kirche ist, oder Rebbe hat ihm gegeben, wird ein Licht, was beleicht nicht nur allein und sein Mischpoche und sein Stott, nur die ganze Welt herum, bis in die Himmel Echheit, was man kann sich trachten, als ein Mensch sich sehr begrenzt. Was ist sehr wichtig, wird tun als seine Tag, wird viel sein tagtäglichen Leben. Und tun die bestimmte Meise, was kann tun in einer bestimmten Regel, in einer Samennefen oder in einer zweiten Nefen, wissen wir von der Dogma, aber man soll als die, was nicht katmus, aber man soll nicht trachten, dass das eine Kleinigkeit und sich kann auf die Mine nicht wie wird tun. Der Vater darf sich nicht anstrengen, lernen wir davon. Aber das wird ein Licht, jeder einzelne Meise, a viele Dibur und a viele Machschowa, was Seif kol Seif wirkt sie echt, aber den Dibur und Meise von den Menschen ist von der höchsten Wichtigkeit für ihn und für die ganze Welt, als ein und einziger Mensch durch ein und einzige Tat Meise seine, oder Dibur oder Machschowa, kann wirken auf die ganze Welt, wie der Rambam bringt das Aris Klorer, heit in Absag din Halacha.
Perhaps the most famous of the Rebbe's Nigunim has been adopted in many Jewish circles during the special prayers on the major festivals. The words capture one of the most essential Hasidic teachings, the profound love God has for His people.
Did you enjoy the comparison between the star and the Jew? The star is relatively small and far, but its reach is incredible. We might see ourselves or our fellow Jews as small, but in truth, one small action, word, or positive thought can be so impactful, it can be life-changing, or indeed even have a global effect. The former athlete who never imagined becoming a rabbi, you can hear it in his voice. He's still surprised at the Rebbe's suggestion. And he has since gone on to help so many with his authorship and counsel. That indeed is the power within all of us. That's the potential that we each have. That is what the Rebbe sees in us, and that's what the Rebbe empowers us to see in others. Ask yourself, am I selling myself short? Is there something I should be aspiring to? If someone believed in me as the Rebbe does, how high would I be able to reach? Indeed, is there someone in my circle of influence that if I truly believe in them, they would aspire higher? What's holding me back? How do I share the Rebbe's vision with them? So I'd like to conclude with my own personal thoughts about the videos that we've seen here tonight. At that first Farbrengen on Yud Shvat in 1951, the Rebbe assembled a group of Hasidim that had just been jolted, not only by the passing of their Rebbe, who had been their guide for 30 years prior, but also by the devastation that the entire world had experienced with the Holocaust and the unthinkable, ineffable upheavals and tragedies that had affected the entire Jewish people only 6 years prior. And yet, can you believe what a bold challenge the Rebbe put the Hasidim up to? Far from coddling them in an attempt to assuage their pain, the Rebbe urged them to find comfort in action and in setting the bar higher than ever before, as evident in his awesome mission statement, that love for each other must be step one. The revolutionary nature of the Rebbe's insistence on placing the people first must not be understated, because honestly, we all know deep in our hearts that nothing in life disappoints quite like people disappoint. God and Torah cannot compete with people when it comes to disappointments or heartbreaks. People let us down almost as often as they lift us up. People are hugely imperfect. Whilst thoughts of God and Torah elevate and purify the mind and heart, encounters with people, especially close encounters, often confuse the mind and sometimes break the heart. It seems intuitive then that when trying to become a more spiritual person, that one try and maybe distance from people for a while, maybe practice isolation, meditate on higher realities, and imbue a healthy dose of the idealism of God and the Torah. And then, equipped with that spiritual refinement, one can approach the most challenging task, dealing with people. And yet, here, the Rebbe promotes the exact opposite. Start with people. Ahavat Yisrael must come first. First, work to love and care for your fellow Jew, all of them, including the difficult, disappointing ones, and then proceed accordingly. It's truly an astonishing path and certainly not a common one, but the Rebbe advised us of it, told us how we can do it, empowered us to get it done, and impressed upon us the sense of urgency that it must get done. And over the past 70 years, we have seen time and again how it is indeed getting done. So now, let's put the pedal to the metal. My friends, leave tonight empowered to feel like the leader that the Rebbe saw in each of us. We're all shepherds. We're all equipped with the power to make a great impact in the world, seeing the good in others and bringing light and warmth to others, creating yet even more leaders in the process. The late great Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks was one of the highest profile examples of a man that was profoundly impacted by the Rebbe's Farbrengens. So much so that he actually translated many of them into English and published them in a book called Torah Studies. Rabbi Lord Sacks had a knack for explaining the Rebbe's outlook in simple English. For example, he once proclaimed, the Rebbe said to himself, if the Nazis searched out every Jew in hate, we will search out every Jew in love. How true and how appropriate for tonight. And even more perfect is this classic from Rabbi Sachs, the ultimate takeaway for our Farbrengen. Good leaders create followers. Great leaders create leaders. And that was the Rebbe's greatness. Not only did he lead, he was a source of leadership in others. On almost every single occasion, the Rebbe concluded his Farbrengens with a call to action. Because words are nice, but actions are the most important thing. So I hope we will all leave tonight empowered to feel like the Jewish leader the Rebbe believed we each could be. To realize that each one of us has the power to make a great impact in the world, bringing light and warmth to so many others, and to help others feel that they are leaders too. And as we do, there is no question that the cumulative effect of our global efforts of goodness and kindness will certainly bring to reality the Rebbe's ultimate vision for the world, a vision that was really shared by all of our prophets, and that is a world perfected and redeemed with the coming of Mashiach speedily. Amen and L'chaim.
Okay, we are back. L'chaim, everybody. L'chaim livracha. The preciousness of a true leader was the fact that made everyone realize how precious each one of us is. So God willing, with the inspiration that we get, and hopefully we got lots of it tonight, we should continue to work towards not only loving each other more, putting all the differences to the side, of course, be united as one people, but also to work on ourselves. And of course, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. You all have been inspired. That's one of the reasons you are here. You're constantly working on yourself. So whether it's those of you who have decided to concentrate on more Torah learning on Shabbat instead of other activities, or putting on the tefillin, lighting the Shabbat candles, studying some more Torah, or anything else of that sort. So all of this should give us even further strength and share it with each other. If we are inspired, share the words of inspiration with your friends, with your family, and you'll be surprised how desperate everyone is for some inner strength to be able to face the challenges of life, especially these days, and furthermore, to be able to fuel the growth that is needed for us as one people, as a nation, and in totality, the entire world. And God willing, before you know it, with a blink of an eye, Mashiach will be here. So I want to thank you all for the special program tonight, for being present, being here and experiencing it. And God willing, we're going to continue next week with our regular class, Thursday night and Wednesday night. Don't forget, Wednesday night is the new JLI series, Journey of the Soul, which is all about the afterlife. And Thursday night is the other portion of Journey of the Soul, which is the continuation of the book of Tanya, which we have restarted from the beginning. So for all of those that want to learn about the journey of the soul coming down to this world and what it's all about, from the beginning, that's Thursday nights. And we're going to learn, we're going to grow, and we will see each other in Jerusalem, God willing. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Good program, Rabbi. Very good.
Thank you, Matilda. It was nice seeing you here.
Good night, Rabbi. It's nice enjoying that. Thank you.
Hi, Gloria, Marty. See you guys.
King.
Larry, Parhami, it was a pleasure as usual. Thank you. And Steve, definitely an honor.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Okay, we will be in touch. Yeah?
Yeah, tomorrow.
All right, super. Take care.
You too. Good night now, Rabbi.
Thank you, sir.